They say we can't choose where we're born, but we can choose the path we walk. I used to believe I'd made it, escaped, left that weathered timber house behind, abandoned the musty rod of ancient wood, and most importantly, I'd left grandfather in my past. Nearly 20 years had passed since I last saw him. Grandfather Boonsong, a man whose eyes carried the glacial indifference of ice forming over a winter pond, whose skin always reeked of liniment oil. That smell arrives with the sound of his footsteps, heavy, deliberate, pacing back and forth outside my bedroom door. But fate has a cruel sense of humor. When you have nothing left, when your bank account shows a balance measured in mere hundreds of baht. The letter from the lawyer arrived like a rope lowered into the abyss where I'd been drowning. An inheritance, the land, his land. I had no choice. I had to go back, had to grasp that rope I'd sworn I would never touch again. Lawyer Wiewat adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses, studying me from across the polished mahogany desk. A middle-aged man drowning in a drab gray suit. He slid a thick manila envelope toward me. "Mr. Kong," he began, "this is the entirety of your grandfather Boonsong's estate. The land in Rayong province, the original timber house, and a bank account with a balance substantial enough to sustain you for the rest of your natural life." My hands trembled as I reached for the documents. The crisis consuming me, the gnawing, desperate hunger for money, made my answer immediate, thoughtless. "What do I need to do?" Lawyer Wiewat's lips curled into something that might have been a smile, thin, precise. "To claim your grandfather Boonsong's complete inheritance, there is only one condition. You must sign these documents yourself, in person, and you must begin managing the estate within 30 days. I snatched the expensive fountain pen resting beside the papers. The ink flowed out thick and dark, congealed like old blood seeping from a wound. I pressed the nib to page after page, scrawling my signature with increasing speed. Each stroke of the pen brought a sensation I couldn't explain, a breath of cold air against my neck. The room was sealed, no windows open, no air conditioning vent nearby. The chill raced down my spine like skeletal fingers trailing along each vertebrae. I ignored it, forced my eyes to focus on the zeros marching across the bank statement. So many zeros. "All finished," I said, smiling. Lawyer Wiewat gathered the documents with startling swiftness, almost snatching them from beneath my hands. His expression shifted. Relief, the unmistakable look of a man who dropped a crushing weight from his shoulders. "Congratulations, Mr. Kong. The inheritance, all of it, every asset, every burden, now belongs to you, completely." I drove back to grandfather's house with a singular purpose. Survey the property, liquidate everything, erase every trace of Boonsong from the record of my life, wipe him from history. When I turned onto the overgrown driveway, something jolted through me, a recognition I didn't want to feel. The darkened timber house seemed to be waiting, expecting me, even though I'd never wanted to return. But the thought of all that money, all those assets about to bear my name, I pushed the feeling down, buried it. The house loomed ahead, rising from a tangle of wild vegetation like some massive beast crouched in shadow, patient, watchful. The windows, clouded with grime and age, stared back at me like cataract-covered eyes, like grandfather's eyes. I stepped out of the car. The first scent that hit me wasn't rain-soaked earth or decaying leaves. It was liniment oil. His smell, so thick, so concentrated, it coated my tongue with bitterness. My throat clenched.
Grandfather had been dead for 3 months. The lawyer confirmed it, cremated. So why could I smell him? I forced myself forward, each step toward the front door heavier than the last. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps inside the house, the same ones that had paced outside my bedroom door when I was 6. Grandfather, Kong has come home.
The first night in Grandfather's house, silence pressed down like a weight on my chest, so complete I could hear my own breathing. I lay on a threadbare futon in the main hall, unwilling to sleep in Grandfather's bedroom. The liniment oil smell still saturated everything, but now it mingled with something else, something worse. The dank, fetid odor of rags left to rot in standing water. I squeezed my eyes shut, forced myself to ignore the scritch-scratch sounds from the ceiling above. Just rats, or the old timber contracting as night temperatures dropped. Just that, nothing more. Then I heard it, a sound that made my eyes snap open in the darkness. Like something heavy being dragged across wooden floorboards, slow, deliberate. The sound came from Grandfather's second-floor bedroom, directly above where I lay. The dragging ceased, directly above my head. Silence flooded back, but it wasn't empty. I could feel it, a crushing presence bearing down on the ceiling boards above me, as if someone stood there, bent forward, staring down through the thick planks of wood, looking for me. My hand shot out, grabbing the flashlight. Every rational thought screamed at me to run, but another voice rose up, the voice of greed, of rage. I moved toward the stairs. Each step groaned beneath my weight. But something was wrong. The wood felt soft, too yielding. Not like stepping on timber at all. It felt like stepping on skin, on something that was still alive. I shoved open the door to Grandfather's bedroom. The flashlight beam trembled in my grip, sweeping across the emptiness. The old iron bed frame stood where it always had. Dust lay thick and undisturbed across every surface. No drag marks, no footprints, nothing. I exhaled, started to turn away. Then the flashlight beam caught the mirror on the wardrobe. I saw myself reflected there. But behind my reflection, in the corner of the room where the light couldn't quite reach, I saw it. Grandfather's rocking chair. Moving, back and forth, a gentle, rhythmic sway. Not from wind, every window was sealed shut. It rocked as if someone had just risen from it, and on the worn red velvet cushion, threadbare, split with age, I watched as the depression slowly, impossibly, began to rise, as if the weight pressing it down was only now dissolving, fading, leaving. Then I heard it, a whisper at my ear. Not words I could understand, just a wet, phlegm-choked rasp, the voice of someone whose lungs were drowning, a sound I recognized down to my marrow. Kong, you've come back to pay me what you owe me, haven't you? Morning light sliced through cracks in the shutters, casting pale bars across the floor. I tried to shake off the previous night, rationalized it away. The rocking chair had simply lost its balance. I'd been exhausted, half asleep, my eyes playing tricks. That's all. I turned my attention to Grandfather's massive desk in a corner of the hall.
I needed the land deed, documents, anything with tangible value I could convert to cash. The bottom drawer was locked with a corroded brass key. Inside, I discovered a black leather-bound notebook. Not a bank ledger, a record of debts, written in grandfather's distinctive, spidery handwriting. I flipped through the pages slowly, name after name, dozens of villagers, slashed through with thick red ink. Next to some names, notes in the margin. Land seized, complete. Eviction, complete. But one name had been circled over and over. The pen pressed so hard the paper had nearly torn through. Sofon family, life debt. Beneath it, a small receipt was glued to the page, a pharmacy bill for an enormous quantity of liniment oil. And below that, in grandfather's hand, "They're all dead now, but the little one survived. Must silence him permanently." My heart plummeted. Silence him? What did grandfather mean? Then a memory surfaced, rising from the depths of my mind like an air bubble from the bottom of a murky pond. When I was young, I'd had a friend, a rail-thin boy who used to sneak into the yard behind grandfather's house. We'd share snacks together. And then, one day, he just disappeared. As I stared at the date in the ledger, an icy chill crept down my neck. At the edge of my vision, on the dust-covered desk surface, I saw them. Fingerprints, small ones, a child's. They weren't old marks preserved in ancient grime. They were forming now, appearing in the dust one finger at a time, pressing down slowly as I watched, as if an invisible child stood beside me, leaning over to read the ledger with me. The notebook tumbled from my hands. The liniment oil smell suddenly twisted into something else, the faint, sickly sweet stench of rotting flesh mixed with the mineral dampness of dirt. I stumbled backward, but my foot landed on something small and round. I slipped, hit the floor hard. Rolling away from my foot was a marble, dull red with a faded plumeria flower pattern inside the glass. I recognized it instantly. It had been that boy's favorite toy, the one he'd clutched in his palm the day I saw grandfather drag him by the arm toward the closet beneath the stairs, the day he disappeared forever. The sound from the ceiling started again, but this time it wasn't the scraping drag of something heavy. High-pitched, strangled, the sound of a child's laughter bubbling up from a parched, ruined throat. "Kong, do you remember me?" I sat on the floor, gasping for air. The red plumeria marble clutched tight in my fist. It was ice cold, the chill gnawing into my palm like frostbite. Then the sunlight streaming through the hall began to change, not dimming, transforming. It shifted to a deep, burnt orange, the dulled amber of a sun setting 20 years ago. The birdsong outside fell silent, replaced by the laughter of two children. The present dissolved, layered over with the past. I saw myself at 6 years old, sitting cross-legged on polished floorboards that still gleamed with newness. Across from me sat Boy, the only friend I'd ever had here. He was lining up a shot with his marble, his face smudged with dirt but bright with a smile. But at his ankle, I stared. A thick rope of woven banana fiber was tied around Boy's ankle, the other end knotted to the leg of grandfather's desk. In this waking nightmare, too vivid, too real, I watched my younger self hand Boy a piece of bread. He devoured it like someone starving. I heard my own child's voice ask, "Why don't you go home?" Boy looked up at me. His eyes brimmed with sadness, fear. He pointed toward the door of grandfather's study and whispered, "Your grandfather says my father ran away, left his debts behind, so he has to keep me here as interest." My heart hammered like a war drum. I wanted to scream at those two children, tell them to run, to get out, but something held me frozen, a spectator trapped in my own memory. The study door swung open, Grandfather Boonsong stepped out, and the stench of liniment oil crashed over me like a wave. In his gnarled hand he held a dark glass bottle, not his ledger, something else, thick, black, viscous. He didn't look at me, his cataract-clouded eyes fixed on Boy with the cold appraisal of someone examining garbage. "Kong, go to your room." My 6-year-old self stood, trembling, terrified. I turned to look at Boy one last time. His eyes were wide, pleading. "Kong, help me! Don't leave me alone with him." But my younger self just lowered his head, turned his back, and walked up the stairs without looking back at the friend who was about to be dealt with. I jolted awake, back in the darkened hall, drenched in sweat. The liniment oil clung to my nostrils, but now it was mixed with something sharper, the chemical reek of wood preservative. I looked down at my hands. The red marble was still there, but something else had appeared. Red marks encircled both my wrists, like angry welts, like I'd been bound with rope. As I stared, they began to darken, bruising, deepening to purple-black right before my eyes. The inheritance Grandfather left me, it wasn't just property. I couldn't stay in that house another minute. The marks on my wrists throbbed with a deep, pulsing ache, as if barbed wire had been wound around them and pulled tight. I drove into town. I needed the truth, needed to hear human voices, needed proof I wasn't losing my mind. The old coffee shop at the edge of the market was my destination. The moment I stepped through the door, the lively chatter died, instant, complete, as if someone had pressed mute on the entire room. Dozens of eyes turned toward me, not welcoming, not curious, pitying, and afraid. I approached an elderly man sitting in the corner, cigarette smoke curling around his weathered face. "Uncle, do you know Boonsong, my grandfather? I'm his grandson. The man choked on his smoke. His chair scraped backward with a sharp screech. He stared at me, his withered hands trembling. When he spoke, his voice was a ragged whisper. "Why did you come back? That blood inheritance, hasn't it devoured enough people already?" I asked about the Soffin family. The old man went silent. For a long time, then he told me the truth, and it froze the blood in my veins. 20 years ago, the Soffin house burned to the ground the same night they were served eviction papers. The parents died in the flames, but the body of their youngest son, the little boy, was never found. Whispers filled the village that my grandfather had taken the child before the fire started, kept him as leverage, insurance, a living bargaining chip to force the parents to sign over their land rights. No one ever saw that boy again after that night. The old man exhaled a stream of smoke. But everyone around here knows, on rainy nights, you can hear a child struggling inside the walls of your grandfather's house. Your grandfather didn't just seize land, Boy. He sealed his secrets in plaster, buried them in the walls. The words hit me like a fist to the chest, sealed in plaster. The image exploded in my mind, the unnaturally thick wall, the small handprints in the dust, and grandfather's constant use of liniment oil, not for his joints, but to mask the smell of something rotting behind those walls for 20 years. I ran back to my car. As I slid into the driver's seat, I glanced in the rearview mirror, and my heart stopped. Boy was sitting in the back seat. Half his face was burned away, charred black, the bone of his skull visible through melted flesh. He reached forward with a hand wrapped in the nanofiber rope and placed it gently on my shoulder. "Kong, grandfather says, if the debt isn't paid, we can't leave." I raced back to the house, sledgehammer in hand, purchased from the hardware store with shaking, sweaty bills. I swung it, again and again, every wall I suspected, every unnaturally thick section of plaster. I hammered until my palms split and bled, until chunks of concrete and plaster cascaded down in clouds of choking dust. But behind those walls, nothing. Just old bricks, dust, empty cavities. No child's skeleton. No decomposed remains from decades past. No evidence of grandfather's ultimate crime. I collapsed against the rubble, laughter bubbling up from my chest. Harsh, manic, the sound of a man unraveling. Those villagers were just superstitious cowards, spinning ghost stories to destroy grandfather's reputation. Or maybe grandfather was just a common loan shark, a ruthless businessman, not a murderer, not a child killer. I made my decision that night. I contacted a land development company and accepted their offer, the lowest price I'd ever seen for property this size. I didn't care about profit. I just needed it gone, out of my life, erased. Within a month of selling grandfather's land, combined with the rest of the inheritance, I became a king in Bangkok. I purchased the most expensive penthouse condominium in the heart of Sukhumvit that had just been completed. Only the interior decoration remained, which would take another 2 to 3 months. The penthouse suite was decorated with imported hardwood and marble. I spent money like a madman. I bought everything grandfather had forbidden, luxury furniture, both imported and custom-made. Bangkok, for me in those days, was a new world that had no musty smell of old wood, no footsteps of the dead. The room I bought was on the 45th floor, with large floor-to-ceiling windows, so that I could look down at the tiny people like ants on the road. I felt like I was above everything, above even the curses of the people in that village. I used the inheritance money from the sale of the blood land madly. I bought a pitch-black sports car that was so glossy it clearly reflected my happy face. I entered high society, drinking bottles of liquor worth tens of thousands of baht that tasted so smooth until it completely drowned out the bitterness of my childhood memories. None of the new friends I met in luxury clubs asked about my roots. They only admired my generosity. "Kong, you're great. Kong, you're the real deal." I laughed at those compliments while ordering another bucket of champagne. I had really forgotten grandfather. I had completely forgotten that the money in the checks I used to buy this happiness was money obtained by taking someone else's life. I found a new girlfriend, Rin, a model so beautiful that heads turned wherever we went. I took her to the most expensive restaurants in the city, every night a celebration. When I held her in my arms in the icy air-conditioned bedroom, I didn't hear the scraping of wood anymore, only the proud, satisfied beating of my own heart. I believed I'd escaped, truly escaped. The miserable past was behind me. Ahead lay nothing but brightness, nothing but success. "Kong, does the room smell weird to you?" Rin glanced up from her wine glass, 100,000 baht per bottle, as we lounged on the genuine leather sofa. "Smell? What smell?" I inhaled deeply. Nothing but expensive leather and her perfume. "Like liniment oil, or something old people use." She wrinkled her nose. "And when I walk around in here, the floor feels strange, like it's vibrating, like something's moving underneath." I laughed it off. Babe, this is a luxury high-rise. The soundproofing is incredible. You're just imagining things. Rin shrugged, giggling. It's gone now anyway. I must be tipsy. I didn't give her words a second thought. My life was too full of happiness to waste time on paranoia. Until one morning, as I stood at the bathroom mirror, shaving, I noticed the small purple mark on my neck one morning while shaving. Just a bruise, probably slept wrong, bumped into something, nothing worth worrying about. I covered it with expensive concealer and went on with my luxurious life. But the following week, the bruise spread. Not in a round blob like a normal contusion. It grew in jagged, rough lines, and beneath my skin I felt it, an unbearable itching, as if thousands of ants were crawling through my veins. I visited the most expensive doctors in Bangkok. They ran tests. You're perfectly healthy, just stress and lack of sleep causing minor dermatitis. Get more rest. One night, pain ripped me from sleep. It felt like invisible blades carving into my back. I stumbled to the bathroom mirror, yanked off my shirt, and froze. Under the flickering neon light, my back wasn't just bruised, it was covered in numbers. Purple-black figures raised beneath my skin in grandfather's distinctive, spidery handwriting. Every amount, every interest calculation he'd recorded in that black ledger, every bot he'd extorted, every debt he'd collected from the Sophon family and countless others, was being engraved in my flesh like a tattoo from hell. I clawed at the numbers with my fingernails, trying to peel them away, but the blood that oozed out wasn't blood at all. It was thick black oil that reeked of liniment, filling the entire penthouse with that nauseating stench. The numbers crawled higher, up my neck, across my jaw, creeping toward my face. I glanced down at the floor, and my heart seized. The black leather ledger, grandfather's debt record. I didn't bring it here. I know I didn't bring it. But there it was, lying on the marble tiles. With trembling hands, I compared the figures appearing on my body to the entries in the book. They matched. Every bot, every satang, exact. I smashed the bathroom mirror, unable to bear the monstrous reflection staring back at me. But behind the shattered glass, I found something that stopped my heart. Not a secret passage, a memory, the most violent memory I'd ever suppressed. 20 years ago, the day grandfather told me to go to my room, I didn't obey. Not completely. I crept back, peered through cracks in the floorboards down into the courtyard below. I watched grandfather drag boy's gagged, struggling body toward the charcoal kiln behind the house. The villagers were wrong. Grandfather didn't seal boy in the walls. He burned him, alive. But not just to kill him. What grandfather did was far more perverse. He ground boy's charred bones into powder, mixed the ash into paint for the house, blended it into the liniment oil he rubbed on his skin and applied to every wooden surface in that house for decades. That's why the smell never faded, because boy's spirit, his flesh, his bones, his very essence had been dissolved into the structure itself. He'd become part of the wood, part of the walls, part of everything. And the most horrifying revelation, when I sold that house to the land development company, they didn't tear it down and haul it away. They recycled it, ground the timber and plaster into composite materials, repurposed them for manufactured furniture and fixtures in luxury condominiums across Bangkok, including mine. I looked at the walls of my luxury condo, at the expensive imported furniture, at the bed where I'd slept soundly. Everything surrounding me was made from boys' remains, recycled, repurposed, transformed into my happiness. "Boy," I whispered, my voice breaking. A shadow materialized in the corner of the room. The child's face looked peaceful, relieved. He smiled at me, a smile of strange, terrible freedom. "Thank you, Kong." The whisper was soft as wind through leaves. "The debt, I forgive it all now." Boy's form dissolved into black smoke. It rushed toward me, into my mouth, my nose, flooding my lungs. I collapsed onto the million-baht marble floor, convulsing. My skin began to split along the lines of those grotesque numbers, the ledger entries carved into my flesh, tearing open like seams. Black blood poured out, thick as oil, reeking of liniment. I tried to scream. No one heard. Because this luxury penthouse, the one I'd chosen so carefully, so proudly, was engineered for perfect soundproofing. No one could hear what happened inside. I finally understand, in these last moments as my life drains away, why Grandfather performed that twisted ritual on Boy. Grandfather believed that land and wealth obtained through deception carries a curse, what Thais call wipat sap, cursed fortune. Property stained with wrongdoing can never stay with a family for long. It withers, it crumbles, the curse ensures it. So, Grandfather needed to create a scapegoat spirit. He took Boy's body, an innocent child from the very family he'd destroyed, and ground it into the house itself, forcing the victim to become a Fiban, a house ghost, a spectral vessel bound to guard the cursed wealth and absorb all the karmic consequences in Grandfather's place. As long as Boy's soul remained trapped in that wood and plaster, fragmented and suffering, the karma from Grandfather's crimes would never touch him. It would all be absorbed into Boy's ghostly prison instead. That's why Grandfather grew richer and richer, why he stayed healthy until his final breath. He'd created a spiritual garbage bin to contain his sins. But Grandfather knew something else, too. He knew the karma he'd accumulated was too massive to carry alone into the afterlife. For decades, he lived in luxury, while Boy served as his karmic dumping ground. But Grandfather understood that one day he would die. And when his last breath left his body, Boy would be freed from his bondage. And every ounce of karma Boy had absorbed for him, every murder, every theft, every ruined life, would surge back like a broken dam, flooding directly into Grandfather's soul in the afterlife. Grandfather didn't leave me that land out of love. It was a karmic debt transfer. He bound his sins to every deed, every document, every piece of paper bearing his name, and he laced them with an occult condition so vile, so calculated. If a blood descendant willingly signs to accept the inheritance and uses that wealth for personal pleasure, that descendant has voluntarily accepted full karmic responsibility for all debts of the deceased. The day I signed my name in front of that lawyer, grinning with greed, that was the moment Grandfather's spiritual chains unlocked and they snapped tight around my soul instead. Every baht I spent chasing happiness, every sports car I drove, every bottle of champagne I popped, every luxury I bought, I was racing to the pit of hell Grandfather had dug and left waiting for me. Grandfather didn't die with his secrets, he died with relief, because he'd successfully delivered the invoice from hell, and his only grandson had signed for it, accepted delivery, and agreed to pay in full.